Present us, O Lord, in all our doings with thy most gracious favor, and further us with thy continued help, that in all our works begun, continued, and ended in thee, we may glorify thy holy name, and finally, by thy mercy, attain everlasting life. Amen. I would like to table a report from the Provincial Auditor of Saskatchewan pursuant to Section 14.1 of the Provincial Auditor Act. The Provincial Auditor has submitted her business and financial plan for the year ended March 31st, 2025. Introduction of guests. I recognize the member from Arm River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's an absolute thrill here today to welcome 14 of the finest students you will find in this province seated in the West Gallery. These are grade 12 students from Imperial, Saskatchewan, Imperial School from there. So please give a wave. And they are joined by their teacher, Veronica Daniluk, and a couple of parent chaperones, Kathy Williams and Jocelyn Freeman. And I'm certainly looking forward after question period to connecting with these fine folks and having a good conversation. So with that, I would certainly welcome them and ask all members to welcome them to their Legislative Assembly.
Request leave for an extended introduction.
Leave has been requested for an extended introduction. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to the legislature today, I'd like to introduce, a few people sitting in your gallery, Mr. Speaker. First of all, Aaron Hill, who works in my office every day as in communications and does a great job working with our team there to ensure that we are responding to inquiries and responding to different issues that come up during the day. Joining Aaron today, though, are his mother and father-in-law, Tim and Tammy Kachaluba. And there are a couple of high school sweethearts who have dedicated their lives to industry and public service here in Saskatchewan. Tammy, a registered nurse for over 30 years, spent most of her career on the oncology unit, actually, at Regina Pasqua Hospital, serving patients with some of the most severe cancer diagnoses that we see. Tim, a career steelworker, has spent over 30 years at the Evraz plant on the north end of the city, and starting as a laborer, Tim has moved up the ranks to crane operator to safety manager, and is now the head of safety at the Regina plant for Evraz. Now also joining us, Mr. Speaker, is Aaron's brother, Josh. Now, Josh, I understand, is not only following in the footsteps of being a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, like his father, but is also employed at Evraz and is an electrical engineer technologist. And I understand that Josh was recently married. His wife was unable to make it today, but congratulations to both of them. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Speaker, probably the most important person in Aaron's life, his wife, Bailey. And Bailey is a nurse here at the Medical Surveillance Unit at Regina Pasqua, I believe in her 4th year, working in the healthcare system here in the province. And you know, Mr. Speaker, we often talk about our families being very important to us in the roles that we do here. Certainly the same is true for our staff, and our families always make us better people. So I'd like to ask all members of the Assembly to welcome Aaron and his family to their legislature here today.
Recognize the member from Last Mountain Touchwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request leave for an extended introduction.
Leave has been requested for an extended introduction. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you, I'd like to introduce 16 public service employees seated in your gallery. Please give a wave. They are here today, Mr. Speaker, to take part in the parliamentary program for the public service. This program includes a tour of the Legislative Building, briefings presented by various branches of the Legislative Assembly Service, an opportunity to sit in the Speaker's Gallery and observe question period. And after question period, they're going to have a brief meeting with myself and the member from Douglas Park too as well, and yourself too, Mr. Speaker. The participants are employees from the following ministries: Agriculture, Social Services, Highways, Energy and Resources, Government Relations, Immigration and Career Training, Integrated Justice Services, SAS Builds and Procurement, Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency, Trade and Export Development, Labour Relations, and Workplace Safety. So please join me in welcoming these people to their Legislative Assembly.
Recognize a member from Regina Douglas Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honour to join with the member opposite in welcoming this fine group of public servants to their Legislative Assembly. It's always a pleasure to have the parliamentary program here. I hope you have a very wonderful day and that you learn a lot throughout the course of your meetings and by observing proceedings today. I always enjoy the opportunity to have the question and answer after question period, so I'm very much looking forward to, as is the member opposite, meeting with you later and having a great dialogue. On behalf of the province, let me say thank you for the work that all of you do as public servants each and every day in your respective ministries, and I ask once again all members join me in welcoming all of you, all of them, to their Legislative Assembly.
Recognize a member from Cypress Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you, in the West Gallery, I'd like to welcome Mr. Eldon Jamieson. He's a rancher from the Cypress Hills area and also the Reeve of the RM of Maple Creek. Sorry. I'd like to welcome to your legislature building. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Saskatoon-Utana.
Request leave for extended invitation.
Leave has been requested for extended introduction. Leave granted. Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's such a pleasure to be on my feet here today and introduce speakers located in the East Gallery. These are such dedicated individuals who have been working so tirelessly to advocate for a safe water supply here in Saskatchewan. I'm just so proud of all the work that they've been doing. They're here to also be present when I introduce Bill 615, a bill that will call for a comprehensive wetland conservation policy here in Saskatchewan. And I just want to start off by naming those who are present here today. We have Tom Fink, who is a councillor with the Resort Village of Canada Valley. He's also a director of the Last Mountain Lake Stewardship Group. Elizabeth Nichols is an environmental educator, works with the Project WET to provide literacy on water conservation. Murray Stephenson is here from the SAWS organization, which is the Saskatchewan Alliance for Water Stewardship, and also an advocate for protecting the Quill Lakes. Also present is Lois Adams, a landowner in the Quill Lakes area, concerned about wetland conservation. We have Brenda McLaughlin. She owns a quarter section in the Capel area. We have Peter van der Breggen, also a member of the Colleen Lakes Eco Museum and owner of the Braeburn Inn. Colleen Stewick is here. She also owns a quarter section of land and is concerned about upland drainage impacting her land. We have Susan and Sandra Loundis. They are organic farmers in the Kelvington area that have been impacted by illegal drainage. Dwight Lemon and Carol Lemon join us from Reed Lake. They live on the lake permanently. Dwight is a co-chair of the Cottagers Association, and they've been active in developing a Facebook page for the Duncairn Reservoir Migratory Bird Stakeholders Group to spread awareness about concerns with irrigation on Reed Lake. Also present is Anne Donovan. She lives along Long Lake, and I want to thank her for reminding all of us that there are two essentials to life, human life here in Saskatchewan, and indeed the world, and that is clean air and clean water. Also present, we have Sandy Steffen. She is a member of the Colleen Lakes Eco Museum. And last but not least, Carol and Ken Bell. They are retired farmers that live here in Regina and are concerned about safe drinking water. It's such an honour to have you present here to watch the proceedings here in the Assembly here today. I would like all members to join me in welcoming these residents to their Legislative Assembly.
Presenting petitions. Recognize the member from West Mountain Touchwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We, the undersigned residents of the province of Saskatchewan, wish to bring to your attention the following. Whereas the Trudeau Liberal NDP coalition carbon tax is one of the main causes of affordability issues and inflation in the nation of Canada, and that the federal government has signalled that the carbon tax does affect Canadians differently by issuing an exemption on home heating oil for Atlantic Canadian provinces. Further, that the people of Saskatchewan, 85% of whom rely on natural gas to heat their homes, are unfairly left without support by the Liberal NDP coalition, who continue to drive up the cost of living with their price on carbon. We, in the prayer that reads as follows, respectfully request that the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan take the following action: to call upon the Government of Canada to immediately remove the carbon tax from all home heating costs across Canada, to reduce inflation and drive down the rising cost of living faced by all Canadians from coast to coast. The below undersigned are residents of the great community of Bracken, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Regina Walsh Acres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to present our petition calling on the Government of Saskatchewan to protect Saskatchewan's water supply. The undersigned residents would like to bring to our attention the following: that water is essential for human health, recreation, health of our ecosystems, and our economy. That research from the University of Regina shows the water quality of Saskatchewan lakes is getting worse, and that the provincial auditor has pointed out that Saskatchewan's lack of a wetland policy negatively impacts water quality, and that significant work remains to get to better regulate drainage. Mr. Speaker, I'll read the prayer. We, in the prayer that reads as follows, respectfully request that the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan actively protect Saskatchewan waters from current and future threats to our water supply. Mr. Speaker, the signatories today reside in Fort Capel and Regina. I do so present.
Reading and receiving petitions, statements by members. Recognize the member from Kit River Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan producers are true pioneers of agriculture sustainability. For decades, our producers have focused on soil health, animal health, innovative technology, and research. The Global Institute for Food Security has quantified the numbers and found that Saskatchewan's net carbon footprint for crop production is significantly lower than any other competitive jurisdiction around the world. For example, the carbon footprint of Saskatchewan-produced lentil production in Saskatchewan is over 130% lower than our closest competitor. Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan producers sequester an average of almost 95% of agricultural emissions. Saskatchewan also has 20 million acres of native grassland and tame forages for livestock production, 1/3 of Canada's total, and this land sequesters additional carbon. With Saskatchewan's carbon sequestration as reported in the National Inventory Report and the carbon sequestered in our grasslands, we believe our agriculture emissions from cropping, livestock, and on-farm fuel is already net zero. Mr. Speaker, this right here is the Saskatchewan record, the Saskatchewan story. While members opposite continue to adopt irresponsible viewpoints such as supporting the carbon tax, we will continue to have the backs of our agricultural producers and tell their story around the world. It's a privilege for our government to have an opportunity to bring our sustainability story to COP28 and show the rest of the world how great we are. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon-Lucano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise today to recognize Lane and Sandra Mountney. Lane and Sandra have one of many farms in Saskatchewan that are impacted negatively by illegal or unpermitted drainage. Their farm has been impacted by the walk-in drainage project that started about 3 years ago but hasn't been completed. The project is close to 14 square kilometres and contains 880 wetlands of various sizes, amounting to a total of 2.4 square kilometres of water. As of this spring, approximately 12% of the wetlands remain intact. Most of the water being drained flows into the creek that runs through a portion of Lane and Sandra's land. Their land is needed in the project as the outlet and to handle the rise in the creek's levels. This past spring, they were left to deal with some of their pasture land flooding. Their well water has been impacted as well, contaminated and turning yellow, unsafe for human consumption for many months after the flooding. The Water Security Agency's complaint-based system pits neighbour against neighbour, and I understand Lane and Sandra's frustrations when they've been told that their views don't matter. Thanks to Lane and Sandra for standing up and speaking out when the interests of those upstream are valued more than their land and livelihoods.
Recognize a member from Martinsville-Warman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Saskatchewan's own Wanuskewin Heritage Park has won a National Tourism Award as Canada's top Indigenous tourism destination at this year's annual Tourism Industry Association of Canada Awards Night held in Ottawa on November 22nd. Mr. Speaker, people from around the country are seeking to come and bear witness to over 6,000 years of history represented by Wanuskewin. This award was based on several factors, including cultural sustainability, economic impact, and the quality of tourism experiences. And, Mr. Speaker, anyone who has visited can testify that Wanuskewin knocks it out of the park when it comes to all those factors. In addition to breathtaking scenery and walking trails, as well as detailed historical exhibits and galleries, Wanuskewin is also home to an amazing interactive centre. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that Wanuskewin Heritage Park is currently pursuing UNESCO World Heritage status. If successful in the bid for this prestigious accolade, Wanuskewin will become Saskatchewan's first UNESCO site, and I think this National Tourism Award is yet another reason why everyone in our province can be proud of this historical treasure. I ask that all members join me in congratulating all of Wanuskewin's hardworking staff, volunteers, and management on this recognition, and for their dedication to keeping Indigenous culture and history alive on the plains. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Regina Coronation Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week, the people of Regina Coronation Park got some good news. You see, a few months ago, the Sask Party government told them they were closing Regina Lutheran Home. Regina Lutheran Home is one of the best long-term care homes in the city. So that was a tough decision and surprise for the 62 people living there and for their families. But then last week, the SHA announced that Lutheran Care Home would stay open. Why did this happen, Mr. Speaker? Was it because the Sask Party government decided to invest in our seniors? No, it's because those families spoke up. They came down and said, you can't close it down. It's my mother's home, my father's home, my wife's home, and the government had no choice but to listen to them. I'm new to this job, Mr. Speaker, but I'm so proud that we got this done with the Regina Coronation Park. That's because of the hard work of my colleague in the Saskatchewan NDP, but especially to be the brave families and the workers of Regina Lutheran Home. I thank and congratulate those fine people. You did this. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Calmington-Wadena.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the strength and determination of Kyrell Sapotic, a young man whose passion for sports began in Porcupine Plain. Over the years, his skill and work ethic eventually earned him a spot with the Junior Hockey League, Kamloops Blazers. In January of 2021, Kyrell suffered a tragic snowboarding accident, leaving him paralyzed from the chest down. By October of 2021, Kyrell was all ready to try racing in his wheelchair and has transitioned into a successful multi-sport para-athlete in both wheelchair basketball and track and field. Since his accident, Kyrell has won a bronze medal in wheelchair racing for the province at the 2022 Canada Summer Games and 3 gold medals at the 2023 Canadian Track and Field Championships in Langley, BC. Mr. Speaker, these are just a couple of Kyrell's accomplishments since that fateful day. Kyrell continues to work hard and hopes to one day become a Paralympian. I want to acknowledge Kyrell not only for his athletic ability, but also on being a positive role model for so many. To quote Kyrell, "The big one for me was just staying positive through the whole process. Right from the day of the injury, I realized that I wasn't able to change the past, and I can only move forward." Mr. Speaker, I believe we can all learn from these words. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Regina Pasco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Saskatchewan, every day is better than yesterday. Construction has officially reached 85% completion on the new Urgent Care Centre. This centre will provide patients with additional points of access to healthcare system, helping to relieve pressure on emergency departments and provide more responsive and convenient patient care. It will be open 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, ensuring patients always have access to essential services when they need them. The Urgent Care Centre will complement the services already provided in the community by family physicians and primary care clinic and allow more access for mental health and addiction services by offering same-day care for urgent but not life-threatening issues. Supported by a mix of healthcare professionals, the Urgent Care Centre will offer team-based care that can also provide connection to community services. We appreciate the exceptional work of Graham Construction on this project and all our healthcare workers who will be staffing this facility. Right now, the Regina Hospital Foundation is raising funds to prepare the final touches on the Urgent Care Centre. We cannot express enough our government's appreciation for the collaborative partnership we have developed over the years with the Foundation. We look forward to patients being provided more access to health care in 2024. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize a member from Athabasca.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our province is one step closer to being the location of the new biggest uranium mining project in Canada.
Hear, hear.
On November 8th, NextGen Energy received ministerial approval under the Environmental Assessment Act of Saskatchewan to proceed with the development of Route 1 project. The project is currently planned to be located 130 kilometers north of La Loche. Mr. Speaker, NextGen is the first company in more than 20 years to receive full provincial environmental assessment approved for the Greenfield uranium project in Saskatchewan.
Hear, hear.
Once the project hopefully gets underway, it will represent just under a quarter of the world's uranium production in just a few years.
Hear, hear.
Being located close to First Nations, Métis Nations, and other communities creates opportunity for residents to benefit economically through jobs and increased access to education. However, there's only one thing standing in the way of this economic opportunity.
What is it?
That's right, the federal government. Ottawa should not infringe upon the economic sovereignty of northern Saskatchewan, and blocking projects like Route 1 will lead to lost opportunities for northern Saskatchewan.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, as a representative for the Athabasca constituency and someone with roots that tie me directly to the success of these projects, I am hoping the federal government will do the right thing and approve the project. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
Question period. I recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This tired and out-of-touch government is failing to deliver on health care. We were joined here earlier today by healthcare workers from Pasco Hospital here in Regina. These folks work in diagnostics, providing X-ray, radiological, and CT scans to Saskatchewan people who are sick or injured so they can get the treatment and the care that they need. But they're frustrated by the chronic short staffing they see each and every day when they come to work. When there aren't enough staff, their unit gets shut down and appointments are cancelled. When will this government actually listen to healthcare workers and fix the short staffing crisis facing patients today.
Hear, hear.
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to begin by thanking the medical radiation technologists at the Pasco Hospital and all across Regina and across our province who are providing this very valuable service for patients right across Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. And our government, as I've said previously, is very committed to doing what needs to be done to recruit, train, incentivize, and retain healthcare workers, and that includes medical radiation technologists. And Mr. Speaker, I understand that there are some vacancies that need to be filled at the Pasco Hospital. As well, Mr. Speaker, my office has been in contact with the group that the member opposite is speaking of, and we're in the process of setting up a meeting for me to have a chance to sit down and meet with them directly to hear about their concerns, their ideas and solutions, and how we can proceed with taking those ideas from them and trying to implement those into those solutions into our healthcare system. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Mr. Speaker, you'd think from listening to that minister that everything in our health system is just fine, but that's not the case. Healthcare workers know the reality when they go to work and see the failures of this government. The people who joined us here today have seen their unit closed when there aren't enough staff. With many open vacancies, unfilled positions, and staff burning out, that's at risk of happening again this winter. If just one or two of these staff at the Pasco Hospital catch a flu or call in sick, the whole system will collapse at the Pasco. How is this acceptable to that minister? How has he allowed our healthcare system to become so overwhelmed and so understaffed?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a strategy in place to address this and many other issues that we have when it comes to staffing, Mr. Speaker. It's my understanding that there are 6 medical radiation technologists at the Pasco Hospital that work with the CT machine at that particular facility. It's my understanding that there are currently 2 vacancies posted by the SHA that are open to applicants, and a 3rd vacancy for maternity leave has been posted, and they're actually in the process of interviewing applicants to fill that maternity leave position. And again, the SHA, in conjunction with the new Saskatchewan Health Recruitment Agency, are using these tools and all tools available to them to recruit, to fill the vacancies, both whether they're permanent vacancies or whether they're maternity leave vacancies, and making sure that we have the appropriate combination, the appropriate mix of staff to be able to ensure that we maintain services at Pasco Hospital. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize a member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Mr. Speaker, that minister would know if you listen to healthcare workers that his actions have not been appropriate to meet the challenges in our system. This tired and out-of-touch government is failing right across the board when it comes to diagnostics. We learned last week that it's taking 6 months to get booked for a mammogram in Saskatoon, and the government's own website shows that 1,544 people have already waited more than 90 days for MRI and CT scans in this province. What does the minister say to those 1,544 people waiting for a scan because this government has allowed short staffing to become the norm in Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This has been a very major priority for us as government. I have met over the past number of weeks with women from across Saskatchewan who have expressed their concerns about, frankly, unacceptable wait times for breast cancer biopsies and diagnostics. Mr. Speaker, at 1:30 this afternoon, the government issued a press release that we are procuring 1,000 scans through a private provider, publicly funded, in Calgary, to eliminate the 300-plus wait list that we have for people that are waiting for breast cancer biopsies. Mr. Speaker, this is an urgent and an immediate action to provide this option for women to travel to Calgary. Immediately, they'll be contacted by the Regina Breast Assessment Centre to be offered the opportunity to have those diagnostics done quickly, Mr. Speaker, while the government continues to work to fill the specialized radiology vacancies that we have, Mr. Speaker. That's action that's being taken, and that is benefiting women across this province, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Mr. Speaker, this minister should remember when his government shipped Saskatchewan residents across the country during COVID, it wasn't a sign of their success, it was a sign of their failure. And the fact that they're doing that again to Saskatchewan people is not a sign that they've managed our health system well, it's a sign of their failures. Right. Mr. Speaker, without staff at the Pasco Hospital, those 1,500 patients can't get their MRI and CT scans. That means they get a delayed diagnosis and they get delayed treatment as a result. All of this impacts patient care. When will the Sask Party accept any responsibility for the state of diagnostic care today? And when will they work with healthcare workers to solve these long-standing issues in our province?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the term that the member opposite used was shipped out of province. Is that what he's implying for the women that are facing breast cancer? Is that what he's implying, that they are being shipped out to Calgary? What would they rather do? What would the members opposite rather do? Would they rather have these women wait? Is that what they would rather do? When this was identified, Mr. Speaker, I had instructed and asked our officials that we look at all options on the table, look at absolutely every option to be able to provide breast cancer biopsies and diagnosis for women facing breast cancer, look at every option. This was an option that became available to us, Mr. Speaker. And I think the women of this province who are struggling and faced with the fear of breast cancer will appreciate this option to be able to get the care they need as quickly as they can and not be opposed by the members opposite who are opposed to this for who knows what reason, because this, Mr. Speaker, is the right thing to do.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon East. Mr. Speaker, that minister should know that every available option would mean listening to Saskatchewan women, listening to Saskatchewan healthcare workers to provide the care where they need it, when they need it, and he's failing at that. These problems are not just limited to diagnostics at the Pasco Hospital. These short staffing issues are widespread across the healthcare system. Nurses protested outside St. Paul's Hospital just this week because of chronic short staffing. And earlier this morning, Sun President Tracy Zambori told the media that Victoria Hospital in Prince Albert is 112% capacity and the OR is closed. Wow. Chronic short staffing is the norm throughout our healthcare system under that minister's watch. Right. Will the minister finally admit that his health human resource plan is not working?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have been listening to frontline healthcare providers. The SHA has been listening to frontline healthcare providers. I'm told by the CEO of the SHA they had a 3-hour meeting with nurses at St. Paul's Hospital on November 22nd. They sat down, met with frontline healthcare providers, provided some solutions which the SHA is now implementing, Mr. Speaker. Here's what's happening in this province, Mr. Speaker. Since December of last year, 870 new nursing grads coming through Saskatchewan training institutions hired into our healthcare facilities, Mr. Speaker. 600 net new nurses, Mr. Speaker. More registered nurses, more licensed practical nurses, more nurse practitioners in this province, Mr. Speaker. What's the NDP position on this? What is their plan? What is their record, Mr. Speaker? You know, we had a look, Mr. Speaker. In their 2020 election platform, what did they promise to do? They promised to hire, Mr. Speaker, a grand total of 450 more nurses over 4 years, Mr. Speaker. We have hired over 600 nurses in just 1 year, far above the NDP's paltry targets of 450 over a span of 4 years, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. Recognize a member from Saskatoon, Canada.
Mr. Speaker, this tired and out-of-touch government isn't listening to healthcare workers, and they're not listening to people who have concerns about this government's failures when it comes to managing wetlands and our water resources. Saskatchewan is the only province without a wetland conservation policy. More than a dozen people are here today calling on this government to finally develop a strategy to protect wetlands. More than 2,300 people wrote letters to the Premier asking for the same, and they still haven't got a response. Will the Minister for the Water Security Agency meet with the people who have come here today, and will he commit to a comprehensive wetland policy?
Recognize the Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the guests of the gallery into the session on question period, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, we have really done an intensive process of the dialogue with the delegates, Mr. Speaker. We want to make a Made in Saskatchewan water management strategy that obviously is key to the future as we build and protect our world-class sustainable agriculture sector, Mr. Speaker. The stewardship policy will include a suite of policy tools such as wetland retention, using drained water for irrigation, and cropland beneficial management practices, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this has been a very, very engaging process, Mr. Speaker. We have met with over 70 different organizations and stakeholders across the province, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to do that as well, Mr. Speaker. I have lots of questions, I have lots of answers here, Mr. Speaker. I can give a list of everybody we've been engaged with, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you the consultation process continues.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon-Newtown.
Mr. Speaker, the consultation has not been intensive. I've heard from many stakeholders who have said just as much. We're losing tens of thousands of acres of wetlands every single year. Conserving our wetlands is important for everyone in this province. It's important for the environment, yes, but it's so much more. It's critical to our economy. It's important for hunters and outfitters, for drinking water, for First Nation and Métis rights, for recreation and cabin owners. There's a wide swath of people who are impacted by the loss of wetlands, and this government is failing all of them. When will this minister act, and when will we see a comprehensive wetland conservation policy?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Agriculture.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, in my previous answer, we have started the consultation process. It has been ongoing, Mr. Speaker. I do have a list of everybody we have consulted with. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to put it on the record. It's going to take me a while, Mr. Speaker, because there's 70 different groups. But I'm going to list them all because the member opposite asked. The member opposite asked who we consulted with, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to give the list and read it into record today, and I don't care if it takes the whole question period, Mr. Speaker. I will give it. The Saskatchewan Winter Cereals Development Commission, the Saskatchewan Chamber of Commerce Water Council, the Provincial Association of Resort Communities of Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Provincial Parks Owners Association, the Prairie Water Global Institute for Water Security, University of Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker, Prairie Adaptation Research Collaborative, University of Regina, the Cohansachouama Graduate School of Public Policy, the Saskatchewan Mustard Development Commission, Saskatchewan Forage Council, Saskatchewan Sea Growers. That's page 1, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon-Newtown.
Mr. Speaker, there are so many people in this province who have been blocked from participating in those consultations, and they're tired of not being heard. They have serious concerns about this government's upcoming ag water stewardship policy. The focus is far too narrow, and the consultations have shut out many of the folks here today and other important stakeholders. Every single person in this province needs access to clean water, and this tired and out-of-touch government isn't listening. The feedback from people and experts needs to be incorporated into the plan, and the costs of mismanaging our water resource, like the hit to our producers this year, need to be taken into account. Wetlands help to mitigate and manage the impacts of drought. Will the minister actually listen to these people, and will he ensure the costs of mismanaging our water resources are fully taken into consideration?
Recognize the Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, the folks at Water Security Agency have been totally engaged with the public, both in either written submissions, phone-in comments, or in-person submissions as well, Mr. Speaker. I did page 1, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to go to page 6. Okay. But I will read the others if the members opposite want to hear them. Here they are. Fishing Lake First Nation, Pheasant Rump Nakota Nation, Beardies and Okamasas First Nation, Onion Lake First Nation, Thunderchild First Nation, Big Bear First Nation, Peter Champton First Nation. These were all part of the consultation process, Mr. Speaker. Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, Battleford's Tribal Council, Battleford Agency of Tribal Chiefs, File Hills Qu'Appelle Tribal Council, Saskatoon Tribal Council, Yorkton Tribal Council, Mr. Speaker. This is only on page, I'm only on the 3rd page. I will get more, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon, Newtown.
Mr. Speaker, the people of this province are looking for real answers, not a filibuster by that minister. The people who are here today have serious concerns about how this government is mismanaging our shared water resource. Just take a look at the issue of illegal drainage. When one landowner illegally drains onto another landowner's property, it's almost impossible to get them to stop. There's no enforcement and no accountability for landowners who are doing their part and are following the rules. When will the minister, it has to stop, when will the Minister for the Water Security Agency stand up for people who are following the rules but are paying the price for this government's failures to act on illegal drainage?
Recognize the Minister of Agriculture.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, we are in the process of developing an ag water stewardship management program, Mr. Speaker. We will get the policy. We want to make sure that all aspects of this are heard, Mr. Speaker. There's been recommendations been put forward. As of a month ago, Mr. Speaker, there was a meeting in Yorkton where there was representatives from the SCDA, APAS, SARM, SAW was there, FSA was there, Saskatchewan canola growers, Saskatchewan wheat growers were there, and Saskatchewan wheat was there, Mr. Speaker. Many other recommendations are coming forward. That is why the consultation process is going forward and continuing, Mr. Speaker. We want to make sure we get this right for the province of Saskatchewan. A strategy that was never done under the members opposite when they were in government, Mr. Speaker. We're going to get this one right.
Recognize the member from Regina-Rosemont.
Mr. Speaker, this tired and out-of-touch government is mismanaging our public water resource, and they're mismanaging our public finances while failing to offer any relief for families facing a crushing cost of living. They blew through their budget projections by $1.3 billion with increased costs and lower revenues. But none of that is going to help Saskatchewan families dealing with the cost of living and all the added costs brought to them by this government by way of bills and taxes. How is it that this government still isn't offering an ounce of cost of living relief for families barely getting by?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite's question speaks volumes to the fact that the NDP have no plan, and it is very disappointing, so disappointing, that they think that spending $850 million to support our agriculture producers is blowing our money. It is so disappointing that they say spending $80 million to combat wildfires is blowing our money. It's so disappointing that they say spending $40 million of additional supports in the classrooms is blowing our money. It's so disappointing that they say that over $40 million for an approach to homelessness is blowing our money, and it's disappointing that they say spending an additional $55 million on a human resource plan in healthcare is blowing our money. And that is not to mention that we brought down the operating debt by $2.5 billion and returned $400 million into the pockets of people in Saskatchewan.
Recognize the member from Regina-Rosemont.
Mr. Speaker, the minister knows that's not the case, and that's the very minister and that ag minister that attacked producers just 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker, and blamed them for their deficit. But families are breaking the bank to fill the tank, and they deserve some cost of living relief. This tired and out-of-touch Sask Party government has mismanaged our finances so badly, they're now claiming that the cupboards are bare. They've wasted billions on their own mismanaged pet projects, old and new, from the bypass to the GTH, to $1 million pavilion in Dubai, to an $11.6 million settlement with one of the Sask Party's biggest donors, IT projects with runaway costs, $100 million for province, contract nurses, the list goes on and on. Why is there no end to the mismanagement this government will waste public dollars on, but no relief for families at the pump?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite knows that the affordability tax credit that this government gave to residents in our province pays for a lot of the gas tax that is here in the province. But it's unconditional because not everybody has a vehicle to drive or drive as far. This is unconditional for them to spend where they are having pressures. However, Mr. Speaker, the member opposite lists areas of one-time funding that he thinks is a waste. Capital dollars, quite frankly. Those capital dollars, once spent, are not available the next year for ongoing costs. But yet, for ongoing costs, he wants to scrap a number of the areas where we expanded the PST to the tune of $202 million, Mr. Speaker. He also wants to scrap the PST in construction to the tune of $485 million, Mr. Speaker. He wants to increase health care for the tune of, I'm just going to guess a number, but let's say $690 million. How about education? At least $310 million. If I go through the list, it's over $2 billion.
Recognize the member from Regina-Rosemont.
You know, Mr. Speaker, it's a real bad look to squander the hard-earned public dollars of Saskatchewan people while putting families and their finances underwater, Mr. Speaker. Wasting dollars, Mr. Speaker, while not offering a stitch of relief for Saskatchewan people, just higher costs and taxes. We've called on this government to suspend the fuel tax for 6 months to help struggling families. Why won't the minister finally agree to that today?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
I've gone through the list a number of times where there's over $2 billion in relief for individuals, families, seniors and students within our budget this year and each and every year. But I would like the member opposite, what's his plan? He has listed a number of areas, wants he foregone revenue, and he wants to have an additional spending, not just once, not just a capital project. He wants to spend that'll be operating year over year over year. If they were in power and they did what they say they would do, we would have a deficit of $3 billion.
Recognize the member from Regina-Rosemont.
Every Saskatchewan person listening to that finance minister needs to take what she says with 1.3 billion grains of salt, Mr. Speaker. To the finance minister, why won't she cut the spin? Why won't she cut the waste and finally deliver some cost of living relief to cut the cost for families across Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
You're here.
Every person listening to that finance critic should be very, very worried if they ever form power, and they will not, Mr. Speaker, because they have no plan. They make a lot of promises, they have a lot of criticism with no idea of how they're going to pay for all their promises. They would break this province, and it would be in interest rates for ongoing for our children in the next generation, just like what the federal government is doing. Mr. Speaker, they would be no different than the irresponsible spending of the federal government.
Recognize the member from Regina-Elphinstone Centre.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, we were joined by seniors from the High Park Tower in Moose Jaw who want action on the unacceptable state of their social housing. They don't feel safe in their own home. They feel like they're living in, quote, a prison. They found feces and used needles in the common areas, all in a home that's supposed to provide safe and affordable housing for seniors. You know, Mr. Speaker, the situation has now gotten national attention, and it's completely unacceptable, and it's certainly not unique to Moose Jaw. The minister said he would look into the matter. What has he found, and what steps will he take to make things right for these seniors? Hear, hear.
Recognize the Minister of Social Services.
terms of the seniors housing portfolio, we work very hard to ensure that we have a safe place to stay for individuals who are 55 years age and older, Mr. Speaker. In certain instances, there will be folks who have a disability that need access to buildings, but we want to ensure, and we rely on local housing authorities to ensure that people are able to live compatibly within those areas. We looked at potentially having some security available in that particular building and in that area of Moose Jaw and ensure people are safe.
Here.
Ministerial statements. I recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to rise and speak about today's announcement that will help protect the health of Saskatchewan women. It's our position that the current diagnostic wait times for breast cancer are not meeting acceptable targets, and more must be done immediately. That is why the Government of Saskatchewan is taking immediate action to increase overall diagnostic service volumes through a publicly funded, privately delivered agreement with a provider in Calgary. This initiative will provide our patients with access to urgent breast cancer diagnostic procedures while ongoing work continues to improve current service levels closer to home. Eligible patients on an urgent wait list for breast cancer diagnosis will be contacted and asked if they would like immediate access to procedures out of province at the private medical facility in Calgary. This initiative is a temporary measure to accelerate urgent diagnostic breast cancer procedures, including breast mammography and biopsies, until these services are stabilized in our province. The Ministry of Health does not reimburse or cover the costs of travel or accommodations for patients who receive care outside of Saskatchewan. However, due to the urgent and potentially life-saving nature of these requests, and further that current in-province capacity is not sufficient to perform these procedures in a timely manner, the Ministry will provide travel reimbursement to a maximum of $1,500 to support travel expenses for the patient and one support person. Breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed form of cancer in Saskatchewan women. More than 700 Saskatchewan women are diagnosed with breast cancer every year. With early detection, breast cancer can be successfully treated, and women can go on to lead healthy lives. In 2023-24, our government is providing the Saskatchewan Cancer Agency with $222 million to support and strengthen cancer care services, a 183% increase since 2007. We remain committed to ensuring patients have timely access to healthcare services, and we will continue working with all healthcare sector providers and patients to reduce these times. The Saskatchewan Health Authority has implemented several improvements in provincial service delivery, including extending hours of service with additional volumes being performed at Saskatoon for long waiting and urgent patients from Regina and southern areas, centralizing booking for breast imaging across Saskatchewan to provide quicker access for all patients, implementing 3D breast imaging at SHA facilities across the province, and exploring options to increase volumes for diagnostic breast mammography in regional hospitals such as in Moose Jaw. Our government and the SHA continue to work collaboratively on our Health Human Resources Action Plan. We have put focus on training and recruitment of medical radiation technologists, sonographers, and radiologists with specialization in breast imaging. Earlier this year, our government announced the expansion of more than 550 seats in high-demand health professions, including the Medical Radiation Technologist program. We have also significantly increased the fees paid to radiologists for breast biopsies to support recruitment and retention of breast radiologists in our province. The SHA continues to provide financial support and incentives for additional training for general radiologists to specialize in breast radiology, as well as medical radiation technologists and sonographers that are interested in this specialization. Understanding that quick access to diagnostic services is vital to ensuring patients receive timely and appropriate treatment, I had asked that all options be considered to reduce current wait lists. And while work continues on bolstering Saskatchewan resources so we can provide this care at home, our partnership with a private provider in Alberta will offer immediate solutions to patients and staff. This isn't the first time that our government has utilized a private-provided, publicly funded solution. And earlier this year, we launched a privately operated, publicly funded partnership to allow for immediate access to procedures for long-waiting surgical patients. Since 2010, our government has utilized private surgical facilities to increase overall provincial volumes and provide timely access for patients. And we also introduced patient's choice legislation, allowing for 2-for-1 private pay MRI and CT services to provide more options for Saskatchewan residents. And we know that these options provide immediate solutions. Mr. Speaker, up to 1,000 women now have the option to accept a shorter wait time by choosing this option to travel to Calgary for care. But it will not just be the women who are traveling that will be benefiting. This will also shorten the wait list for patients still receiving services in Saskatchewan as well. And this initiative will increase overall capacity to provide care for Saskatchewan residents in a timely manner. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. Recognize a member from Saskatoon Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Minister of Health for providing his remarks in advance for me to review. I'd like to correct something that was shared in question period today. Of course, all members in this Assembly on both sides absolutely want people in Saskatchewan to get access to the diagnostic scans that they need. Yeah. Everybody wants that outcome, but the fact is that we've got folks here in Saskatchewan, especially Saskatchewan women, who are in desperate situations, waiting 5, 6 months and even more for those diagnostic tests that they need to ensure that they get the care that they need. Those diagnostic tests are so crucial in informing medical decisions to provide care for Saskatchewan people, especially women facing the diagnosis of breast cancer. Mr. Speaker, we heard this canvass in question period today, and earlier today we were joined with several healthcare workers who provide diagnostic scans at Pascal Hospital, and they're able to point to the abysmal track record of this Sask Party government when it comes to managing our health system to ensure that people get those diagnostic scans that they need. Today's announcement is an absolute indictment of their record on health care. It is clear evidence of their failures to provide care for Saskatchewan people where they need it and when they need it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Introduction of bills. Recognize the member from Regina, Douglas Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that Bill number 614, the Public Participation Act, be now introduced and read a first time.
It has been moved by the member that Bill number 614 be now introduced and read a first time. It is pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion. Carried. When shall the bill be read a second time? I recognize the member.
Next sitting of the Assembly.
Next sitting.
Item number 2, Ms. Ritchie.
I recognize the member from Saskatoon-Nutana.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Bill number 615, the Comprehensive Wetland Conservation Policy Act, be now introduced and read a first time.
It has been moved by the member from Saskatoon-Nutana that Bill number 615 be now introduced and read a first time. It is a pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion. Carried.
First reading of this bill.
When shall the bill be read a second time? I recognize the member.
At the next sitting of the Assembly.
Next. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. I recognize the Chair of Intergovernmental Affairs and Justice Committee.
Mr. Speaker, I am instructed by the Standing Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs and Justice to report that it has considered certain supplementary estimates and to present the 6th report. I move that the 6th report of the Standing Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs and Justice now be concurred in.
It has been moved that the 6th report of the Standing Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs and Justice is now concurred in. Is the Assembly ready for the question? It's the pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion. Carried. I recognize the member from Regina Wallshakers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am instructed by the Standing Committee on Human Services to report that it has considered certain supplementary estimates and to present its 6th report. I move that the 6th report of the Standing Committee on Human Services be now concurred in.
Perfect. It has been moved by the Deputy Chair of the Human Services Committee that the 6th report of the Standing Committee on Human Services be now concurred in. Is the Assembly ready for the question? Pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion. Carried. Orders of the day.
Second readings. Item number 1. The Honourable Mr. McMorris to move second reading of Bill number 153, the Miscellaneous Municipal Statutes Amendment Act 2023.
Recognize the Minister of Government Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to move second reading of Bill number 153, the Miscellaneous Municipal Statutes Act 2023. There are 3 acts that govern municipalities in Saskatchewan: the Cities Act, the Municipalities Act, and the Northern Municipalities Act 2010. Together, these 3 acts determine how municipalities are established and governed. Many of the changes are in all 3 acts, so they are combined into one bill. This ensures the provisions that relate to all 3 acts are the same. Ministry staff made presentations, attended conferences, and took part in focus groups on the key areas addressed by this bill. Our stakeholders provided input and suggestions for improvement. All that work has led to the bill before you today. Mr. Speaker, these amendments target specific hurdles encountered in recent years. For example, minor adjustments are proposed to improve the first level of assessment appeals. Other changes focus on improvements, the relationship between organized hamlets and rural municipalities. Some of the other amendments improve local governance processes. I will touch on each of these amended areas. Recent regulation amendments were made to improve the first level of assessment appeal. Now, Mr. Speaker, we are adjusting wording in the 3 acts to better reflect those changes. Any property owner can appeal the assessment of their property, which affects how much they pay in property tax. It is important for property owners to have a just and fair process for appeals. The first level of appeal is a municipal responsibility. Council must appoint a board of revision to hear appeals. In practice, that has not always happened, especially in municipalities where appeals are decades apart. The new provision states that any municipality that does not appoint a board of revision will use a centralized board of revision by default. That way, appeals won't be sitting at the first level of appeal waiting to be heard because there is no board appointed. The amendments also better describe the new centralized board of revision as it currently operates. This will make sure that the board is well positioned to fulfill its duties. Ensuring all property owners have access to competent board hearing their appeals better serves the people of Saskatchewan. The changes to the Act also align the roles and powers of the Assessment Appeals Registrar with current duties. This provides greater clarity about the type of work the Registrar does. The Registrar certifies boards of revision to hear appeals in Saskatchewan. The Registrar also coordinates matters related to centralized boards of revision. Mr. Speaker, work will be done with municipal sector and assessment agencies continues. We seek to further improve the property assessment appeal system. To this end, several of the amendments improve operational matters for all boards of revision. For example, a Board of Revision is now able to combine appeals received on the same property into a single hearing. That way, all evidence regarding a property can be heard at the same time, and a single decision will apply for that property. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to highlight some changes to the Municipal Act required due to recent regulatory amendments affecting organized hamlets. Organized hamlets are established by minister's order and remain a part of the rural municipality in which they are situated. Each organized hamlet has a board to represent the community and to advise rural municipalities on budget and operational matters. The registrar now requires the hamlet board and the rural municipality to each adopt certain policies. These policies help establish transparency and mutual understanding. To go further, this bill requires an agreement between the organized hamlet and the rural municipality. The agreement will clarify the roles and responsibilities of each party. Mr. Speaker, the agreement will address many areas of concern, like the process for managing the organized hamlet's budget. Currently, when an organized hamlet and a municipality has a dispute, a 3-person appeal board is established to hear the matter. The organized hamlet board selects one person to serve on the board. The rural municipality selects one person to sit on the board. Finally, the 2 parties must agree on a chairperson. Now, an organized hamlet or a rural municipality will be able to refer the dispute to the Saskatchewan Municipal Board. The Saskatchewan Municipal Board has the experience and the expertise of hearing municipal disputes. Plus, the parties will be better served because the Saskatchewan Municipal Board has the authority to require mediation before a hearing. These changes all aim to improve relationships between rural municipalities and organized hamlets. Ultimately, the bill helps to build a stronger Saskatchewan communities. Finally, Mr. Speaker, several process improvements respond to the suggestions from stakeholders. As we all have experienced, virtual meetings have become more commonplace. Councils across the province have adjusted to virtual meetings when necessary. Many councils continue to hold some meetings that are fully virtual or hybrid. This bill establishes clearer rules for holding virtual council meetings. It also ensures the public continues to have a place to listen and view the meetings as it occurs. Another process improvement suggested by stakeholders in this bill includes providing a ward population variance for those municipalities that use wards to be set in regulation. This will better accommodate potential updates to these limits. As well, Mr. Speaker, these amendments provide all municipalities the authority to phase in increases and decreases in property tax. Currently, only cities have this authority. Now all municipalities can use the property tax tools to manage tax shifts that may occur due to reevaluation. Mr. Speaker, before I finish, I'd like to take a minute to thank many stakeholders. People and organizations, both inside and outside of government, spent considerable time and effort on these amendments. Some of the amendments you see were proposed by stakeholders who devote their valuable time to refining the changes in this bill. I thank them for their input, advice, and feedback in developing this legislation. Next spring, the Ministry will consult stakeholders on associated regulation changes to support the change proposed in this bill. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I believe this bill shows government's continued commitment to supporting local government and building stronger communities throughout our province. So, Mr. Speaker, I move second reading of Bill 153, the Miscellaneous Municipal Statutes Amendment Act 2023.
It has been moved that Bill number 153 be now read a second time. Assembly ready for the question. I recognize the member from Regina University.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Pleasure to enter a couple brief comments on Bill 153, and I'd like to just start by expressing appreciation for the work of all those who work in municipalities across the province, as well as the good folks in government relations. Minister highlighted a number of changes to impact these 3 acts, various technical and jurisdictional challenges. Mr. Speaker, and looking at the clock here, I'm not going to say too much more other than I think an appreciation for all those working in and for local governance. Of course, it's important to balance efficiencies with autonomy and that local expertise of which we are so proud in this province, Mr. Speaker. I know the critic will do the heavy lifting of working with the valued stakeholders in this sector, and with that, I am happy to conclude my remarks and move to adjourn debate on Bill 153.
Member has moved to adjourn debate. It is a pleasure assembly to adopt the motion. Carried.
Government orders adjourn debates. Item number 1, resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 140, the Miscellaneous Statutes Repeal Act 2023. Ms. Nippy Albright.
Recognize member from Regina Elphinstone Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to enter into debate on Bill number 140, the Miscellaneous Statutes Repeal Act 2023. Pretty uncontroversial piece of legislation here, Mr. Speaker. I understand this is a bill repealing a number of acts that have become obsolete or outdated. It's been interesting to go back and just read some of the comments of my friends who have, my colleagues who have. Thanks. Also, my friends. Forgot I wasn't in court, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues who have, entered into remarks about 1 or 2 of the bills. I just want to take a moment here. I did go through the list of bills, and one of them here is the Summer Resort Village of Carlisle Lake Resort bill, Mr. Speaker, and that hit me a little. It was assented to, I believe, in the late 50s, and I know a little thing or two about the Carlisle Lake Resort. The Fishers and Mahoods in my family spent some time there. My great-grandfather built a little shack out there back in the day. It wasn't much, but it was certainly the place of all the magical memories from my childhood. So it was neat to think about that time, Mr. Speaker. Of course, this would have been a resort situated on the White Bear Reserve, who surrendered conditionally this land for lease. Mr. Speaker, it certainly just brought back memories about the cinnamon buns at the Carlisle Bakery, which I understand, in speaking to a parent who reached out to me on a childcare issue, is still very much open, and she actually works at the bakery, still making that same recipe. So it's the second time this week I've been reminded about the good times at Carlisle Lake, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But yes, this is a housekeeping bill. It's interesting to think back about how much has changed even in that community since the 50s, and certainly it makes good sense to update this legislation. So with that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will move to adjourn debate on Bill 140.
The member has moved to adjourn debate on Bill 140. Is that agreed? Carried.
Government orders adjourn debates. Item number 2, resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 142, the Municipal Statutes Utility Line Locates Amendment Act 2023. Ms. Nippy Albright.
I recognize a member from Regina Douglas Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's my honour to rise today and enter into the debate on Bill number 142. Now, I understand this legislation will change what used to be a 48-hour notice requirement for anyone who is digging around utility lines to a 3 working days notice to either SaskTel, SaskPower, or Sask Energy. Mr. Speaker, I know I have other colleagues who are very interested to also weigh in on this bill. In order to allow them to do that, I'm prepared now to move to adjourn debate on Bill number 142. That's how it's.
The member has moved to adjourn debate on Bill number 142. Is that agreed? Carried.
Government orders adjourn debates. Item number 3, resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 143, the Child Care Amendment Act 2023. Mr. Vermette.
I recognize a member from Regina Rosemont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With respect to Bill number 143, the Child Care Amendment Act. Our critic and this team has been pushing hard to improve childcare across Saskatchewan. This legislation at first blush falls far short in providing the kind of substantive support to really turn the dial on getting the childcare spaces in place that communities need, families need, when they need them. Mr. Speaker, our critic will continue to lead on this front, and we'll do so through the committee process and continue to work with stakeholders. So at this point in time, I'd move to adjourn debate on Bill number 143.
The member has moved to adjourn debate on Bill number 143. Is that agreed? Carried.
Adjourn debates. Item number 4, resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 144, the Police Miscellaneous Amendment Act 2023. Mr. Berkey.
I recognize the member for Walsh Acres.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. The privilege to enter into debate on Bill number 144, the Police Miscellaneous Amendment Act of 2023. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, our team has been clear. We still see no clear reason or compelling reason as to why we need an additional marshal service in this province. We've heard from the public across this province, and they're wondering the same questions. Why is another level of policing necessary? We've heard from SARM that they don't think that this is the answer to the increasing crime in rural Saskatchewan. We have been clear that we would use the $20 million that's being utilized by the government to create the Marshal Service to increase funding to RCMP, to give RCMP the capacity to expand their services across the province. The infrastructure is already there for them. We would also use $10 million to address the mental health crisis and opioid crisis, drug crisis in this province. We got to treat the root causes of crime, Mr. Speaker, at the same time as dealing with crime. Tough on the root of crime, tough on crime, Mr. Deputy Speaker. With that, I will move to adjourn debate on Bill 144.
The member has moved to adjourn debate on Bill 144. Is that agreed? Carried.
Government orders, adjourn debates. Item number 5, resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 145, the Funeral and Cremation Services Legal Decision Maker Protection Amendment Act 2023. Mr. Vermette.
I recognize the member from Regina Coronation Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's my privilege to be entering to the debate on Bill 145, the Funeral and Cremation Services Legal Decision Making Protection Amendment Act 2023. It's a kind of bill that when we are making any decision or any kind of amendment being made, it is a situation where people, family will be completely having really sad moment. At that time, we make sure whatever we can do the best to make sure that the families, whatever they're dealing with, that unfortunate situation that happened in their family, we have to make sure that we be clear about that. So any legislation, any amendment, if it is moving forward with the stakeholders to make sure that they are being okay with that. So we are on this side of the House, we will be supporting on that. With this, I think our critic on this bill will be looking into more detail by consultation with different stakeholders. So I will adjourn debate on Bill 143. Thank you.
The members moved to adjourn debate on 145. Is that agreed? Carried.
Government orders, adjourn debates. Item number 6, resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 146, the King's Bench Consequential Amendments Act 2023. Ms. Nippy-Albright.
I recognize the member from Regina Rosemont.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Chair. You look wonderful in the chair today, Mr. Speaker, as always. Bill number 146, the King's Bench Consequential Amendments Act, is real straightforward and housekeeping. It simply replaces all references to Queen's Bench rules, regulations, and act with King's Bench, Mr. Speaker. Our critic will engage in the process, and with that being said, I'll move to adjourn debate.
The member has moved to adjourn debate on Bill 146. Is that agreed? Carried.
Adjourn debates. Item number 7. Resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 148, the Film Content Information Act. Mr. Brimley.
I recognize the member from Regina Elphinstone Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to enter into debate on Bill number 148, the Film Content Information Act. We're skating along here today. I understand there's some important committee work to attend to. Just want to get in a few comments on this bill, Mr. Speaker, and also update my friends and my colleagues that Friends is kosher in the Westminster system. I've just got a note from staff. It's a bit old-timey maybe, but regularly used, particularly in the UK. So with that, Mr. Speaker, this bill replaces the Film and Video Classification Act 2016. It provides that the public must be informed of the classification of films. It establishes penalties for non-compliance with the bill. It's a modernizing act of legislation aimed at the industry, the film industry, which I know has taken theaters more than the industry, rather, Mr. Deputy Speaker, which I know has taken a bit of a whopping during COVID. So good to see this piece of legislation being introduced. We did wish on this side that the Sask Party had shown as much care for filmmakers, for the film industry that was growing, thriving in Saskatchewan. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we still hear about this from folks constantly on the doorstep. They're heartbroken by this Sask Party government's decision to gut the film industry. But with that, Mr. Speaker, I don't have much more to add on this bill. I know the critic will enter into debate and provide some thoughtful comments after he's reached out to the sector, the stakeholders, and with that, I'd move to adjourn debate on Bill number 148.
The member has moved to adjourn debate on Bill 148. Is that agreed? Carried.
Government orders. Adjourn debates. Item number 8. Resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 149, the Franchise Disclosure Act. Ms. Conway.
I recognize the member from Regina Rosemont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to weigh in briefly with respect to Bill number 149, the Franchise Disclosure Act. Mr. Speaker, I know the government's detailed the changes that they're aiming to bring with this act. I know there's certainly some questions that the opposition has on this front in working with local businesses to ensure that this legislation is in fact in their best interest, Mr. Speaker. There'll be some seeking of clarity on a few different fronts, Mr. Speaker. We know that a lot of local franchises across Saskatchewan, local businesses, are facing tough times, Mr. Speaker, not made better by a government that's really stuck them with a whole lot of costs, Mr. Speaker, and that have imposed taxes and hardship that have hurt consumers across Saskatchewan. Certainly we see the result of that, for example, through the numbers around restaurant activity in the economy, Mr. Speaker, and the jobs that are related there. Same on the retail side, Mr. Speaker, and that's a reflection of the hardship and challenge that Saskatchewan people are facing, made so much worse by the choices and tax hikes and bill hikes of that Sask Party government, Mr. Speaker. I will move to adjourn debate at this point with respect to Bill number 149, the Franchise Disclosure Act.
The member has moved to adjourn debate on Bill number 149. Is that agreed? Carried.
Government orders. Adjourn debates. Item number 9. Resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 150, the Securities Saskatchewan Investors Protection Amendment Act 2023. Ms. Conway.
I recognize the member from Regina Coronation Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's my pleasure and honor to be standing for debate on Bill 150, Securities Saskatchewan Investor Protection Amendment Act 2023. Mr. Speaker, as we talked about that earlier, that what investment we want, we make sure that people should be protected by all angles, and our critic on that subject will be having a lot of discussion. We'll gather a lot of information, analysis, and we'll get back to that bill. With that, I will be adjourning the debate on Bill 150, Securities Protection Amendment Act 2023. Thank you.
Members move to adjourn debate on Bill 150. Is that agreed? Carried.
Government orders. Adjourn debates. Item number 10. Resume debate on the second reading motion for Bill number 152, the Protection from Human Trafficking Coerced Debts Amendment Act 2023. Mr. Love.
I recognize the member from Saskatoon-Lewasse.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to be on my feet to speak to this important bill. I first want to say thank you to the Minister and my colleagues for the comments that they've put on the record. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that our official opposition, our team, every single day advocate for women in vulnerable communities. Mr. Speaker, I know that time is tight today due to our committee schedule, so I'm going to be brief. Human trafficking is a blight upon our society. It affects so many vulnerable people. It's important that we continue to look at all the options we have to defend the most vulnerable in Saskatchewan. And so we welcome these changes. Mr. Speaker, it seems that the bill in front of us ensures that debts that victims of human trafficking incur due to their human trafficking coercers, that these debts will not continue to haunt them after they are able to escape the vicious cycle of human trafficking. So important. Mr. Speaker, it's sad that the timing of this bill seems even more pertinent today than ever. What really worries me, though, is that we always seem to have a government that only acts when pushed or shamed into doing so. They have to be pushed on every account when it comes to issues such as human trafficking or the above. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I promise that our opposition will continue to push this government to address the issues that are affecting vulnerable communities. I know that our critic will consult with stakeholders on this bill, so that this time I will move to adjourn debate on Bill number 152, the Protection from Human Trafficking Coerced Debts Amendment Act.
Hear, hear.
The members move to adjourn debate on Bill number 152. Is that agreed? Carried. I recognize the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In order to facilitate the work of committee this afternoon and this evening, I move that this House do now adjourn.
The Government House Leader has moved that this House does now adjourn. Is that agreed? Carried. This Assembly now stands adjourned until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.